My guest on the show today is the original folk hero of Indian stock markets. Someone who is an inspiration for all, a hero for some, and above all, he's a great human being. Please welcome Rakesh Jhunjhunwala.
Thank you for your kind words, Nikunj. I hope I live up to them.
Rakesh, what a delight to have you on ET now. Rakesh, Indian markets have been stuck in this range from last 6 months. Do you think we could remain in this range for an extended period of time?
I think the next 3 months are going to be a very difficult period for the markets. I would say that the chances to break down to me seem to be greater than the chances to break up at least in the next 3 months.
Do you see 5,000 acting as a base for this market?
Well, Nikunj, that is difficult to say, but I would think so. 5,000 is markets 4,800, 5,000 is a level I think the market will surely find very strong support if it goes there.
So what is the biggest risk for Indian markets currently?
I think the headwinds under the Indian market, the most important thing I think is inflation. Because inflation controls everything, interest rates, growth. Then I think the second headwind is the sheer government inaction. Although I think we have very good people at the helm of government and they know what needs to be done, and but politically we are not able to get any consensus at all. There was hope of some big reform after the elections, but I think nothing has happened until now. And unless we get some kind of a reform in the subsidies and some kind of a clear roadmap for the DTC and the goods and sales tax, GST, I think markets are waiting for that.
But would you bang the table and say that, or predict rather, that in next 3 years, Sensex will be at least 50% higher than where it is?
Well, I am extremely bullish in the longer period. I think 3 months, until we get clarity on the monsoons, I think which we'll get by August 10. And we'll see what kind of government action comes through. I think until then markets are going to have a downward bias. 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, I am extremely bullish.
Do you think the golden period for Indian equities is not over?
I think it's not even started.
Why do you say that?
Because I think the Indian economy is going to have a growth for the next 30, 40, 50 years. I think that growth is going to surpass everybody's expectations. And I think as a consequence of that growth, equity, and with such low exposure to equity markets by local investors, and India this year will save about $650 to $700 billion. It is legitimate to expect that at least 10% of that should come to equity markets, but we're not seeing that at all. It will come with time. So I think the golden period is still ahead.
What do you make of the earnings? And one is getting a sense that earnings are slowing down. India's economy genuinely seems to be slowing down.
Well, I think the interest rate sensitive companies are going to face some kind of and the banks are going to face some kind of pressures. Very difficult to say on earnings. But I can't see the market may project itself partly on the current year's earnings, but also market is going to project itself on what it thinks the long-term earnings are going to be. And I think near term there could be pressure on earnings, but longer term I think there's no reason why earnings will not grow 15 to 20%.
So let me get this right, and this is one point I don't want to get it wrong for our viewers. Near term you are not bullish, but your long-term outlook is still intact.
Absolutely. And near term I mean until things clarify on August. It depends how events turn out. If the monsoon is good and commodity prices ease, which I personally expect, oil price to be at $80, $85, maybe $85. Then I think, and some government action comes through, inflation may not have come down, but it becomes apparent that in the future months inflation is going to come down, right? Then I think the Indian markets will have a very strong ride after that. So I'm essentially saying the next 2 to 3 months are uncertain. Depending on how events turn out, the period for the next 9 months could be very good or could be okay.
But is the rampant speculation in commodities over?
I don't think so. Rising speculation commodities all-time high.
But insiders tell me that you've been short commodities of late.
Yeah, I'm shorting some commodities. I'm short.
From an India perspective, after QE2, if a QE3 comes, is that bad news for us?
I don't think a QE3 will come. And if it comes, if the US economy grows further because of some stimulus, or there is ease on money, right, or there is a downward pressure on the dollar, it's always good for India.
So which to your mind could be the biggest moving part for next 12 months?
I think inflation is the most important point. inflation and government action.
Are markets seriously disappointed with lack of any government action, Mr. Jhunjhunwala?
They are. And the tragedy is that instead of blaming any individuals, the problem is that we as a nation are not able to form a political consensus. It's no use blaming the politician or those who are in power. We have so many conflicts in our society that to come to a consensus and do what is right is very difficult. I think that will last essentially until we are in the era of coalition governments.
But are you a bit surprised with the resilience Indian markets of late have exhibited? On a relative basis, India is still outperforming, and foreign institutional investors, they've not been rampant sellers this year.
No, the predicted earnings come through at, if you have 1200 rupees earning for the Sensex, I think 15 times is the long-term average. And I think everybody is extremely bullish on India long term. So if markets are down or they're correcting, I think people are going to do individual stock picking. We must also understand that, see, the exposure of the foreign institutions, institutional investors worldwide in relation to the emerging economic size is very, very low. So that is going up. I think that helps.
What do you make of the recent US economic data?
There's no doubt about it that the world is slowing. And also it is partially slowing, I think, the Western societies because of structural challenges. And it is an economic challenges, and it's slowing in the developed world because the governments want to fight inflation in the developing world.
Do you expect FY13 to be a big year for Indian markets, because that's the time the base effect will kick in, commodity prices could correct?
If commodity prices correct and we have good monsoon, I think we will have very good year. I mean, and it's difficult to predict what will happen in 2013. But I have one worry on my mind. I think the euro will break. I mean, there is no whether Greek defaults today or Greek defaults 1 year later. It is going to default, there is no doubt about it. Right, we are already given $110 billion. I was just reading on the Bloomberg, they want 90 billion, they need some 90 billion euros further. And the fact is that there is no economic way by which they cannot default. It's like an endless nala, you can pour as much water as you want. I think that is one event that we should try to keep track of. So that can have a destabilizing effect on markets worldwide.
So are you short euro?
No, I don't trade euros, and there's no euro trading in India.
Dollar against euro, the international index.
No, I'm not sure. I don't do any trading internationally.
Very early part of my career, I've learned from you that when you make an investment, you always consider price as a benchmark. Some of the investments are wildly expensive. VIP, Lupin, Titan.
I see in relation to the price at which I have bought, and I have an exit value in time, which is dynamic and subject to change. And I'm not bothered. Titan may get expensive for 6 months. Maybe it have a correction. That doesn't change the long-term prospects for Titan.